What's the point of life? What's the point of our existence as we go round and round and round in this world? Well, that's what we began to look at last week in the book of Ecclesiastes, and a lot of good things to be reminded of there. And again, as we ask that question, what is the point? And to jump to the conclusion, the point is that when you think of life and our existence and just our physical existence, and from a worldly perspective, just strictly, from a human perspective in our brief time on this earth, and without God in the equation, then our existence really is pitiful and pointless and depressing. As Solomon was examining and finding out for himself in the book of Ecclesiastes, and realizing that, things just go on and on, the world goes on and on, but what's the point? And the answer is, of course, without God, there is no point. Without God, we don't know where we came from, why we're here, where we're going. And so that's what Solomon is working on, and really even throughout all of this, reminding us of our short existence here on earth, and trying to get through to us what really matters in this life. So let's look at chapter 2 today, continuing in the book of Ecclesiastes, where Solomon talks some more about what he was trying to experience and figure out about our existence. And as he says in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, as he's already acknowledged in chapter 1, that vanity of vanities, all is vanity, and what's the point of it all? Then in chapter 2, he begins in verse 1 and says, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth or pleasure. Therefore enjoy yourself. Enjoy pleasure, Solomon said. So he wants to, find out about enjoying life, enjoying pleasures, enjoying things, trying to test himself to see if, this life is all about these pleasures and things we can enjoy. But he says already in verse 1, but surely this also was vanity, was pointless, fleeting. As he goes on to explain, he says, verse 2, I said of laughter, it is mad, it is madness, and of mirth or pleasure, well, what does it accomplish? What does pleasure accomplish? So I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives, this short life. Solomon trying to find pleasures and a point and a purpose of what we need to be doing under the sun or under the heaven in our existence. So Solomon said, I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and parks and orchards. I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. That's nice. Those are nice things to do, right? I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had great possessions of herds and flocks and all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the special treasures of kings and of all the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds, as some versions say. Some versions there talk about, instead of musical instruments, talks about acquiring concubines. There's kind of a difficulty in translating some of that. But anyways, verse 9, so I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me. And again, all of those, we're talking about here. Is there anything wrong with Solomon, doing all of those things and having those possessions and buildings and treasures and all that? No, that's stuff, right? But his point is that what life's all about? He can have all these great things. Solomon did. Solomon had a lot of money, had a lot of buildings, a lot of pleasures to enjoy, a lot of servants. He had wisdom. He was great. He was mighty, wisest, greatest king, if you will, in that time, that there ever was there in Israel and Jerusalem. And he says, verse 10, whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. I did a lot of things. I enjoyed myself. Great. Okay, well, but what did it accomplish? Back to his original question. Doing all of these great things, having all kinds of wealth and wisdom and power and glory and honor, what does it accomplish? In the big picture, in the grand scheme of things. What he said, verse 11, then I looked on all the works that my hands had done and and the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind, and there was no profit under the sun. Why is that? What's Solomon talking about? Why is it no profit? I mean, he obviously gained a lot, he profited a lot, he had a lot, but Solomon's looking deeper. Solomon's looking beyond this life as what he's about to be talking about next, because the reality is, as he gets to next in the rest of this chapter, is, well, you can have all this stuff, but one day you're not going to be here no more. Death is coming. And then what? What's the point of all of that? You ain't going to have that stuff no more. Verse 12, then I turned myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who succeeds the king? This is a fun. He says, what can the man do who succeeds the king? Well, guess what? Nothing that ain't been done before. It's already been done. Only what he's already done. Then I saw that wisdom, yes, here's a truth. Verse 13. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head. The fool walks in darkness. Right? It is better to be wise rather than foolish. But here's reality. Yet I myself perceive that the same event happens to them all. The same event is going to happen to those who live a wise life and those who live a foolish one. But what event is he talking about? Said, so I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity, for there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever, since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does a wise man die? Well, just like the fool. Solomon's comment here is not, although he is kind of portraying it as, you can be wise and do a lot of good things, great things, but, I think his ultimate point here is obviously not that, it's okay to be foolish in your life and whatever, but it's the reality that we're all going to die. Whether we're wise, whether we're foolish, whether we're good, whether we're bad, whatever we have in life, whatever we don't have, the one thing we all have in common is we're all going to die. So, what's the point? All this stuff we can have and do, great. But is that all that's about? We're going to die. And then, as he goes on to say here, even if you live a wise life and acquire a lot of possessions, do a lot of great things, well, you're going to be gone one day, and all that isn't going to mean anything. Verse 17, therefore I hated life. Solomon gets a little discouraged here, a little depressed. He says, therefore I hated life because of the work that was done under the sun. It was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping for the wind. Then I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or foolish? Yet he will rule over all my labor in which I toiled and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This also is vanity. Therefore I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, but he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. For what has man, for all his labor and for the striving of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun, for all his days are sorrowful, his work burdensome. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. This also is vanity. Solomon, what he's reflecting on here, again, as he has said, you work, you labor, you toil like Solomon did. You're wise, you profit, you gain, you do a lot of great things. For Solomon especially, he had a lot of wisdom. He profited a lot. He gained a lot of treasure and wealth and, a glorious kingdom, a lot of great things. But then Solomon says, well, one day I'm going to die and I have no idea, whoever comes after me, what they're going to do. Are they going to be smart? Are they going to be foolish? But then again, I'm working hard, I'm laboring, I'm toiling, I'm accomplishing all of these things, I'm gaining all these things, but then I'm going to be gone, and somebody else who didn't do all the work and labor for all of these things, they're going to get to enjoy it. And so Solomon says, so what's the point of gaining all those things in my life when it's just going to go to somebody else? It's all vanity. We work, we toil, we labor. Again, not that there's anything wrong. We got to work, right? You don't work, you don't eat. We got to provide. But the thing we got to remember, and the point Solomon's making, is we work, we toil, we work hard, even have sleepless nights. We're trying to have a life and to provide and have some pleasures and things. But if we'll stop and think about it, all the toil and labor, all the work and things we try to accomplish in this life, if we're not careful, we'll lose perspective of what really matters. And all the work and labor and money and wealth and fame and power and pleasures we can have in this life, it ain't worth it. It's not it. It's not what life is all about. So Solomon finishes verse 24. Beginning of verse 24, he says, "Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor." This also I saw was from the hand of God. For who can eat or who can have enjoyment apart from God? Or some versions say, who can eat or have enjoyment more than I? Well, Solomon had a lot of enjoyment, but the point is, who can really truly eat and drink and have enjoyment apart from God? Because with God out of the equation, then nothing really matters. It's pretty depressing. For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight, but to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, and that he may give to him who is good before God. This also is vanity and grasping after the wind. I think Solomon gives something here, as he will several times throughout this letter, is again pointing us to God. Yes, God gives us this life. We're going to have blessings from God. We need to give thanks for what we have, what we're able to do. But remember that in all these things and all the enjoyments and pleasures and blessings that God gives us in this life, we also have to remember that this life is not what it's all about. The things we enjoy, the things we can do in this life on this earth is not what our existence is all about. Because there's coming a day when we're going to die, we're not going to be here anymore, and everything we've ever done is going to be forgotten or go to somebody else. And if we're not living for God, then it will all be for naught. It will all be a waste, and we'll have no hope after death. Solomon will eventually more specifically get to. But let's take to heart what Solomon's talking about here in these first couple chapters, especially chapter 2, as we've talked about today. Remembering, what are we trying to find fulfillment and pleasure and joy in? What are we really living our life for? And sometimes we've got to be reminded of this. I think Ecclesiastes is a good reminder to all of us that, as yes, we're to work, to provide for our families and ourselves, to eat and to drink and to, be able to live and to exist and to even help others. But we've got to remember, let's not lose sight of what really matters. We got to keep our priorities straight. Remember, we're living for God. Remember that we are, going to die one day, and we've got to have an answer and a hope in eternity that only God can give. So let's not get so caught up in the work and toil of this life that we are not living for what truly matters. And that is loving God and loving one another, loving our families, glorifying God in all that we do in all relationships. And we'll talk more about that as time goes on. But let's listen to what Solomon was saying here and be reminded, not to be depressed. Although, Solomon was kind of depressed. I think, we don't need to walk away from the book of Ecclesiastes depressed. But if we will keep our focus on God, this can actually be an encouragement to us. an encouragement to keep our eyes on God, and then to enjoy the hope and purpose and joy that only God can give. So let's continue to think about these things each and every day. I look forward to sharing in chapter 3, Lord willing, next week. God bless.